We're going to move on to Chapter 30, Toward a Pacific Century. Start off with India. The people of India protested the British presence, and finally in 1947 or thereabouts, your book says 1948, June 1948, Britain left India. But there was one big super problem with it. The people of India wanted their whole country to be united, but instead the British told the people of Pakistan, you go form your country, and told the people of India, you go form your country. The people of India were very upset. Hey, we want the country to be united. The British said, no, you can't unite. Those people in Pakistan are primarily Muslim, and you are Hindu, and the two sides of you cannot get along, and you never did answer how well you would treat them. So, we know you've been enemies for about, what, 1,000 years. Ever since the Muslims first invaded, you've been enemies. So, you form your country, let the Pakistanis form theirs. Greatly against Gandhi's wish. Gandhi was the first Prime Minister of India. Against Gandhi's wishes, India and Pakistan engaged in a huge tank war. So it was the largest tank battle ever. The war was indecisive. India could not conquer Pakistan. Pakistan could not defeat India. The two sides have been at ever since, and in the course of their fighting, we, the United States, have tried to befriend both sides. India has developed an atomic bomb. Pakistan has developed an atomic bomb. And India faces a constant threat of war with its neighbor Pakistan. Now, Pakistan eventually broke into Pakistan, let's say this is India. There was East Pakistan over here and West Pakistan over here. East Pakistan in 1971 formed a nation of Bangladesh. And this became Pakistan instead of West Pakistan. In the middle here is a country called Nepal. Nepal, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. And this is India. Throughout most of its history, India has been either divided or ruled by foreigners. Right now, India is divided. Like Korea, and India has had a difficult time uniting, and they're not united now. Gandhi was assassinated. The man who took his place was Nehru. Gandhi first, then Nehru. And Nehru was to govern India up until the time he died. The difference between Gandhi and Nehru, Gandhi wanted a depiction of India going back to its old ways, dressing in its old type dress, and he wanted the women in India to go back using a spinning wheel. Folk, the old days can't really be restored. Nehru said, no, India must develop and become technologically minded and get in tune with the rest of the world. So India began to move forward. Nehru died and was replaced by a woman named Gandhi, no kin to the original Gandhi, but a woman named Gandhi, and she ruled with an iron fist. Eventually she also was assassinated. The female Gandhi forced the Indian people to sterilize to curb population. Again, when she passed off the scene, new leaders began to change things in India slowly and gradually. The lost caste, or the outcast, the pariahs, in other words, India has a caste of people who were eventually encouraged to mix in with the mainstream population, and they were encouraged to attend India's colleges and universities. And there was a time, folk, just a few years ago, you don't have to time, but if you had a problem with your credit card, you get on the phone and call the credit card and try to straighten it out, you'd hear a voice speaking in very bad English. Your call was routed to India. They outsourced their credit firm to India because the Indian workers would work so much cheaper than the workers in the United States. Have any of you experienced any of that by any chance?
All the time.
All the time, a couple of you, all the time. Is it still going on?
Probably.
As far as I know, they quit that because they got a lot of complaints. Those people just didn't understand English well enough to communicate with Americans. But Americans would have problems, you know, I got this issue with something on my credit card that I don't think belongs there. And you'd pick, some man from India would pick up and try to resolve it. I think they finally realized this wasn't going to work, but a lot of work, they were outsourcing their work to India. The practice of women whose husbands died throwing themselves on fire has been stopped. This practice we called Sange. Again, this was because a result of the influence of the outside world. Child marriages largely stopped. Again, as of the influence from the outside world. Now, supposedly, any person in India today can marry whomever they want to, in their caste or out. But there was a case where an Indian father killed his daughter because she was dating a man from a different caste, a lower caste than their family. This crime did not occur in India, folks. This crime occurred in the United States. And did any of you hear about it? Yeah, one of you nodding your head. Yeah, it happened. And it made national news, and the father said, I thought in this country I had religious freedom. That's my religion. In my religion, I'm supposed to kill a girl or a daughter if she does such and such. If she dates a man outside her caste, plans to marry a man outside her caste. The judge said, that might be true in your country, but this United States, we don't allow that here. And the judge sentenced him. Again, not everybody in India. If you go to India, you don't have to go. If you ask a person from India, do you still have a group of people called pariahs, outcasts? He'll tell you no. Officially, he's telling the truth. Officially, the outcasts are supposedly can mix in with the mainstream population. But I want to remind you something. In our own country, officially, slaves had the right to vote as long ago as 1868. You could point to the 15th Amendment. Yeah, we could say, but the former African slaves did not really get the right to vote until 1968. 100 years. It took 100 years, folks, from the time the law was put in the Constitution that they had the right to the time they actually could vote. We found ways to say, oh, they have to pass the literacy test, and the literacy test can be passed by a man with a white skin or a woman with white skin. This is in the record books. Some of you might know a little bit what I'm talking about. There was a story that a black man with a PhD failed the literacy test one time, and an illiterate white man passed it. So in other words, we had our problems too. What I'm getting at is, within 100 years probably, the Indian people will no longer have a caste system. But if officially it's all been done away with, and they say, oh yeah, our women can marry from any caste they want to now. They don't have to get the permission of the father. We've outlawed that. But in actual reality, a lot of this still goes on. And I've met a few Indian people and talked to them, and they say that the reality lags behind what the law says. And this has been true of so many societies all down through the ages. All right. The book says that Pakistan got its independence in August 1947, which made Pakistan was really a new nation. Unlike India, it was truly a new nation. Pakistan is primarily Muslim, and again, we try to be friends with them. Pakistan borders right next to Afghanistan, and we've tried to use Pakistan as a base of operations in our war in Afghanistan. And I must say this about the war in Afghanistan. It started in 2001, and it's just about to last longer than our Vietnam War did. Actually, 12 years. It began in October, this is April. It's lasted 12 and a half years. So for all practical purposes, it's already gone on longer than our Vietnam War has, with perhaps no end in sight. Like India, Pakistan felt like they had too many people, and they sometimes forced fathers who had too many children to undergo a vasectomy. India has not been able to hold down its big population. And the same thing applies to largely to Pakistan. I want to say this, and I'll close, about India. A woman went there to try to encourage the people of India to help their sick people. I mean, at one time in India, if you got sick, they would just put you in a house and say, forget it, and most people never came out alive. It was almost like a hospice, except our hospice, we at least try to care for people to the gone. Just forget it if you're sick, and compassion was lacking. And then when I was a kid, even in India, if a person dropped in the streets, everybody would walk around like nonchalant, who cares? A truck would come by, pick up the bodies, take them to a dump, and bury them, and that was the end of it. No compassion, no care. Mother Teresa is the woman I'm talking about. Mother Teresa went to India and tried to convince them you ought to care for your sick, you ought to care for your poor. The result is health care has greatly improved. Infant mortality, once a big problem in India, is with infants who are just simply, well, if they can't survive, that's tough. But now they're trying to tell the people, hey, take care of your infants and more of them will survive. Medical care has improved, and again, thanks to the influence of foreigners like Mother Teresa, who went there and gave them something that they had not had before, was the modern day medical care. All right, so much for that. Oh yes, I got to thinking, there's a name I couldn't remember last time. That name is Woodstock. That when I talked about the hippie movement of the 1960s, they had a big, big meeting, not at this Woodstock here nearby, but at Woodstock in New York, where they had a party where some 200,000 people attended, you can imagine. Woodstock up in New York. Made big news at the time. I did not attend. All right.